Africa, we had a reason to be born there. So we have a God, we have our gods, and we have our mode of worship.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we H-Rap Brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
Freedom's what we need, more solutions is the key. Wave the banner of the free, that's the red, black and green. Bringing truth to the streets, water get no enemy. If it's peace, we at ease. If it's war, we don't cease. EYE's on the crackers and police. Never slack up even when we free, cause we ain't free until we get the land, that's the green. Black power, new African, liberated from the thieves. Nothing better else to be.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we H-Rap Brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
Stimulated cause I'm liberated. Rock me Africa medallion in the middle of the clan. Situation freedom come drum playing by the river. I deliver for my people. It's the sequel of revenge. My friends get ready. Every neat shell bow, every tone shell tail on the mountain I reveal. Throw the shells for light side up. Don't run up in my cup, pour it out and then I strike. Alafia dear.
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we H-Rap Brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
When the African doesn't want to understand or participate in the reason why he was born,
Queens, nod your head if you know you got soul. Women, snap your fingers, let your head wrap roll. Come on. Kings, got us good like we H-Rap Brown. All my brothers, put your hand on your chest now.
see, Africa has not been able to contribute its own knowledge to this universe. But we have knowledge in Africa. You understand?
Yeah, of course.
You see, so all these things need to be in the education system of the African countries.
Lafia. Chama Mboka, Etim Hotep, Rennie Sean. Welcome in peace. My name is Sean. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into this episode of the Massa Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Part 2 of the Hunter-Gatherers of the Congo Basin and Anthropological Review. Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, we're live. Before we get started, I just want to kind of breeze through something that's pretty much a hot topic. For some apparent reason, Kyrie Irving has once again thrown himself into the media with some remarks and a video apparently that he shared. Now, I really don't pay too much attention to anything that Kyrie says, especially the whole Native American thing and a lot of other things that he said prior to, because a lot of his information is based off of a belief, false sense of self, and ignorance. I don't think that he reads or studies. I think that he believes and researches his biases. And it's unfortunate because he has a lot of people that's trying to support this whole movement behind him being suspended for 5 games for his antics and his anti-Semitic remarks. So I want to be clear. I don't care what he say. What he says is what he says. Who he offends is who he offends. Has nothing to do with me. I just don't want our people getting caught up once again in another identity crisis and battle. And ultimately, that's where we are presently with a lot of things. My little cousin shared something on social media, and I was like, nah, that's incorrect. And one of his friends is telling me that I need to do some more studying. And hold on 1 second. Hold on one moment. All right, so I just had to address something that he said because he told me that I need to study. See, a lot of times when like I'm answering a question and I'm telling people we're not no Jews, and they're like, yeah, you know, Jews mean black or this, that, and the third. I'm like, no, it doesn't. They have, they're telling me to go study, me to go study. I don't have an identity problem. I know who I am, where I come from, and where I descend from, specifically West Africa, right? So it's a mess because they want to defend someone off of a belief and off of an emotional response and feeling. However, these are the problems that we have with African Americans, Black people in America. They don't know who the hell Jews are. Anyway, so I didn't want to really get into that. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there to start the show. But I'm gonna go ahead and get into the bill, man, because I don't want to waste a lot of people's time. That's a discussion and a conversation for another chapter and potentially another channel. We don't even really get caught up into that. We Africans over here on this side. Everything we do is Africa. Whether it's West Africa, Central Africa, South Africa, East Africa, elements of Northeast Africa. We African over here. Some of us live under the banter of the sub-Saharan theme. Some of us don't really like the theme, but we understand the theme. We know how to identify ourselves. And it was never with a label such as Jew. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in this afternoon. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I really do want to acknowledge that. So I want to also show love to everybody in the chat. Teddy Lamar, Honey Clark is even here. Zane is in the building. You know what I mean? There's other onlookers that haven't responded yet, but it is what it is. Teddy, great point. Whoopi Goldberg going through it, yeah, because she thought that she was something. And that's the thing, Black people don't know. You know what I'm saying? They so Christianized or caught up in the Bible that they think the only reference to themselves is out of Jew, and it's not. It's not an come on, man. So now we got to have this whole battle with the whole cult of Hebrew Israelitism and so on and so forth. So let me just go ahead and get started, man, and get into this thing. So I just want to kind of recap where we were yesterday, last time we actually talked. We're going to get into the culture diversity of the African Pygmies. Remember, this word extends from someone a long time ago. Does anyone in the chat remember who was the first person to use the word pygmy? And then who was the second person to bring it back forward and interject it into the discussion? Anyone remember? I know there's a delay, but I'm just trying to, you know, jog people's memories and get with them on that. Oh boy, hold on. I just want to kind of jog people's memories and see where we are with that. But does anyone remember who was the first person to use this word, pygmy? I know you see some stuff on the screen, but that doesn't give you the name of the first person who actually used it. And then who was the second person who actually brought it up. Just a little recap. If you don't remember, that's cool. You can say, man, I forgot. You know what I mean? It's no big deal. So just to kind of rehash it for everybody again, I'm going to put it on screen. So hopefully you can actually remember it this time. So when it comes up, you can deal with it. Right? I'm going to wait and see if anyone says it before I scroll up. That's why. I mean, dang it. I didn't mean to show y'all that. All right. Lamar said John Barrow. Okay. So let's go ahead and answer it. Nah. The first person to do it was Homer. He was the first to use the word. Remember, he used it in his work, the Iliad. The second person to reintroduce the word was George Schweinfurth in 1873. So you had Homer first, then George Schweinfurth reintroduces the word, and then you had people adopting it, European and American explorers adopting the word and using it ever since George Schweinfurth reintroduced the word. So again, you have Homer and George Schweinfurth. Of course, you know, if I just say the names, y'all would be like, nah, what's the source for that? So I wanted to go back and put it on screen because, you know, I know how people move. But anyway, so let's get into the cultural diversity in African pygmies. I'm not going to do a lot of reading. I'm gonna do some reading and highlighting some things, and then we're going to move forward, of course, with a little treat. People join us, they join us. It is what it is. I don't really expect much. If I titled the video in reference, the Greeks. So if I titled the video a different way to start like an argument with other channels or something like that, you know, maybe 50 people would be in here. But it is what it is. So in the second half of the 19th century, European and American explorers encountered various groups all over Central Africa that appeared physically different from other people with whom they shared the same rainforest. Whenever such a group was discovered, they were commonly recorded under the homogeneous category pygmy. So they intentionally categorized all these people as one name, homogeneous category, being pygmy. Now, remember, because we learned this in the introduction, this was after a mythical population of short stature described in Greek antiquity, right? This word its emphasis is Greek, and it's from a mythology. Now, other similar and distinct names were given depending on the nationality of the explorers: dwarfs, swergians, Nayans, negreles, little Negroes, to name a few. It became a great endeavor of travelers in the region to find a record new pygmy groups living in yet hidden corners of the Congo Basin. Some sort of competition developed to discover those with the shortest stature and living the most primitive lifestyle, that is nomadic hunting, gathering, and living in beehive-shaped huts constructed of leaves and branches. Let me stop right there. This is a very key factor here when you're talking about the explorers. What is it that they were doing? They literally had a competition to figure out if they can find the shortest statured people living in a primitive lifestyle. This was a competition. Now, the observers of this time were unconcerned with questions of cultural diversity. On the contrary, they were interested in the unity among all pygmies that would serve as proof of the persistence of some prehistoric way of life, pure and monotheist. Many of the confusions of this early period persist even today. Professional scientific observations of specific groups began quite late. Among the first were those of Paul Schebester, who in the 30s lived and worked in the Mbutu people of the Ituru rainforest located in the remote eastern part of the Congo Basin. Sebesta wrote a series of immense tomes detailing the techniques, societies, languages, and vocabulary of the Mbutu people. He was the first scholar to recognize that within these groups, there were various subgroups called by different names, the Asua, Efe, Basua, and Congo, and that discrete languages were spoken by each. Then we move on to the 1950s, where Shabista was followed by Colin Turnbull. He was critical of Shabusa's methodology. He developed a summary ethnography of the Mbitu, emphasizing the strong technological difference dividing the two subgroups, those whose practice with net hunting and those whose subgroup by Mbuti and Basua are those who practice boar hunting. So there was two distinctive methods of hunting between these subgroups. He found that beyond the linguistic diversity recognized by Shabusta among the African rainforest population, there was in fact a profound cultural diversity, and he was the first to plead for careful distinction to be made between them. The term pygmy leads far too easily to meaningless generalization. So there's a problem with the word right there. It was the second person that goes in behind the first person that's doing these discoveries, which Turnbull comes up, he says, hey, wait, we can't label all these people pygmies. These people have different languages, different styles of hunting methods, and all kind of other different cultural nuances that would separate them. Yeah, misnomer was a word that was used. So Turnbull did not go far enough. He still considered the people of Itiru essentially homogeneous, without questioning the actual relations between the groups that did not speak the same language. As a matter of fact, after many years of the often defined anthropological studies in various regions of Itiri, we still lacked ethnographic descriptions of the social exchanges between the two groups, the FA and Mbuti. Yeah, Zane, you got to write some of this stuff down and come back and review it. So, despite the initial advances made by Turnbull and Shabesta in recognizing the tremendous degree of diversity among the pygmies, their work also contributed strongly to the lasting stereotype of the true pygmy that has permeated much of the literature since. Contrary to stereotype, there are in fact extensive variations of permutations in virtually every facet of pygmy life and culture. Rather than in the deep rainforest, some of the groups have been found to live in the savannas, some in the forest savannas, ecotone, and some in the mountains of swamps. Others, though, short-statured, are not hunter-gatherers, while for some the reverse is true. An excellent illustration of this point comes with the lengthy of important field work done with the Baaka in Rwanda by Schumacher in 1949 and 50. Contrary of Shabasta, this group diverged greatly from the stereotype they were living in the mountains and were not hunter-gatherers. They were potterers, servants, and musicians in a complex caste society. So the books of Schumacher, however, are never used in any discussion about the pygmy population. So I'm going to give y'all that name again. Peter Schumacher has work regarding the Batwa. He found a group of people that were living in the mountains. They were not hunter-gatherers. They were potterers. They were servants. They were musicians. They had a very vast, complex caste system. His work was never used in any discussion. So we would need to analyze and review the works of Peter Schumacher and take it into consideration when trying to help outline and define the hunter-gatherers of the Congo Basin. However, as time progressed, researchers gradually woke to the fact that the people of the cultures of the Congo Basin were indeed far from uniform. They populated diverse environments from the rainforest to the savannas. They displayed a broad spectrum of physical, linguistic, and cultural traits. And to date, the African rainforesters collected known as pygmies have been subjects of thousands of publications, though they are varying quality and accuracy. So out of these thousands of publications, they have quality issues and accuracy issues. Now, although some of these publications contributed concretely to furthering the anthropological discourse on Central African rainforest people, the majority of the documentation consists of weakly supported generalized statements. Altogether, despite the apparent abundance of literature on these foragers, great gaps remain in our knowledge. Recognizing an issue, calling it out, seeking understanding to actually employ a better tactic of explanation. Thus, after almost a century of anthropological research in Central Africa, we are still confronted with numerous difficulties. As a consequence of uneven quality and quantity of description and information about various groups, many important questions remain unanswered. So, one of the foremost of the regards to the validity of the pygmies to describe African rainforest foragers, do the various populations to whom it refers bear and meaningful commonalities? Is it perhaps more relevant to compare the differences and similarities among the pygmies themselves than to compare them as a single group against other African foragers or against all other Central African populations? I had to go through and read that for you so that we can be distinct. So let's move a little bit further and understand the names and locations of the groups. Again, I'm not going to hit on everything here, but I am going to give you some specifics. All right. So we're naming the people and the locations of the groups, right? In spite of the immense physical, cultural, and linguistic diversity among Pygmy people, an imbalance of literature has given rise to the popular stereotype based on forest-oriented groups. The most famous of Pygmies, y'all hear that thunder? The most famous of Pygmies are typied by the short stature. Semi-nomadism, hunting and gathering uses temporary camps with domed huts and regular exchange with neighboring farmers. So here's a list of the oriented groups in geographic order from the Atlantic coast to the eastern parts of the Congo Basin. The Baaka, the Baaka, two different people, okay? The Baaka, some of them are known as the Bangombe. The Baaka are known as the Babinga or the Bambinge. All right, those are the Western groups, or the Bambenzele. Then you have the Baembuti, or the Itiru forest. They're in the northeastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. This last group is divided into three ethnic groups: the Efe, Esua, and the Basua. Other groups live in markedly different socioeconomic situations. They settle in villages. They practice more or less efficient agriculture in addition to foraging, and maintain relations with their neighboring farmers. This group is the Bakola. They're known as the Bagele. They're in the southwestern Cameroon. Somebody who Chavis should be taking interest in. The Babango. They're in the central Gabon. Akoa, they're also known as. Bekoya, or the Bakola. They border the Gabon and Congo basins. And the Batwa, they're in the equatorial region of Western Democratic Republic of the Congo. All right. Now, the other less well-known pygmy groups that live in the forest periphery have been documented only in a few papers and reports. We're going to find out who those people are, and we're going to elaborate on them. But I just want to show you these areas of concern here. Now, remember, this is the DRC, right? Cameroon over here. So you got people over here, people in the center, people to the left over here in the east, and then them Cameroonian people over there, and then you got some specks over there. I know y'all can see the map. All right, so let's deal with the other less known people. The Bakola, Babongo, the Bakoya, and the Batwa, they live in rainforests. The Bazan, they live in central Cameroon. The Bakwa, or it's pronounced Batswa, They're in the southeastern savanna of the Congo. The Batwa scattered from Rwanda to Burundi. They're not foragers, but they're farmers and hand workers. All right. They got a caste system that displays a hierarchy. Yeah. Now, must also mention that there are still other groups in South Central Africa, but their documentation is very meager and their status remains ambiguous as a result. But they are still, but they are not called pygmies. Okay. They're called the Batwa in southwestern Angola and different from the Batwa swamp fishermen in Zambia, as well as the Bambeti of the shores of Lake Tanganyika. All right, so the orientation of the literature. The forest-orientated canonic stereotype of the true pygmy originated during the first phase of classical ethnography conducted on the Bambeti of the Ituri forest in the East DRC. Japanese scholars followed it in the 70s and 80s, couching their number studies in the area framework of cultural ecology. All right. Now, American anthropologists and focus on the Bambeti subgroups in the FA for a long-term biocultural study. The research expanded in the late 70s to include the Baaka, known previously as the Bambinga or the Bayaka, whose range was in western part of the Congo Basin. And then you have the monographs on this new group, also forest-oriented by the Demese and by Hushit, were accompanied by ethnobiological and musicological and research and a multidisciplinary study on the focus of their language. Other anthropological studies that were recently done on the Baaka, which is the largest pygmy group in Cameroon, with further material and insight offered in dissertations of Joris and Leclerc. So there's a lot of people involved in, Asian anthropologists. There's a lot of people involved in research, but subjected these people under labels that, to fit them, to fit them all under one label, not labels, but under one label known as a homogeneous group of pygmy. Now, the historical aspects of hunter-gatherer culture began to garner interest in the 80s, was an important step, especially for the studies of rainforest populations. Cultures are deeply intertwined with their sedentary neighbors. So, indeed, this discourse of pygmy groups has been conditioned by questions concerning close mutually dependent relationships, even in publications not directly pertaining to the topic. Now, in particular, considerations of pygmy-farmer relationships stirred controversy over the historicity and the necessity of foragers' subordinations to agriculturalist groups. The wild yam question. Remember, you need to look into them yams, man. It's a big deal. Now, because of the economic changes in foraging groups and the farming populations exist in all rainforest areas, it was proposed that exchanges were a response to strong constraints of rainforest ecosystems. So moving forward, you group all these people into one sum. Most of them are not exclusively economic impacted. They're gatherers, hunters, and then they have these different sub methods of how they hunt and how they gather. But you label them as all pygmy types per se. So while an ethno-linguistic synthesis attempts to trace the relationships back further, Klein approached the issue similarly with the glottochronological and linguistic research. See, in recent years, some collected publications, some of which issued from symposia, had offered regional and comparative approaches in gathering chapters of various thematic approaches from research in different regions. Now, a rough survey of this serious ethnographical literature, which included 345 titles, papers, and books, excluding general papers, some which were discussed above, reveals a huge disparity in documentation. I'm going to say this again. 345 titles, papers, books, excluding general papers, revealed a huge disparity in documentation. A mere 5 groups, the Bambeti, Efe, Baaka, Mbezele, and Baaka provide the topic of 86% of all publications on the Congo Basin. So out of 345 titles, 86% of them was based on 5 groups. While studies in several fields have concentrated on the classical forest-oriented groups, the 8 other main pygmy groups, smaller demographically and less mobile, are the subject of comparative little research, just 14% of the literature. In light of this imbalance, we are now at pains to develop an accurate physical, cultural, and linguistic cartography of the Congo Basin rainforest. 345 titles, 86% focused on 5 groups and not all the other groups. So on to present state of knowledge. It is very difficult in short text to give anything approaching an adequate picture of the cultural details of all the groups. Here lies a problem. So we'll briefly outline some of what was known to the people and the variability among the pygmy groups, concentrating on some technical examples. So here's the hunting techniques of the groups of people considered. Classically considered to be more or less pure hunter-gatherers, pygmy groups in fact depend no more on hunting in terms of substance than other forest agricultural populations. Those that rely primarily on hunting employ a variety of techniques and weapons according to region. So the collective hunting is notably a prevalent technique. Net hunting is the far more common, with 2 exceptions. Efe or Eastern DRC instead of practice collective boy hunting. The Baaka of Cameroon and Gabon practice collective spear hunting without nets. All the groups exhibit much variations in strategy, from the methods used in flushing out game to the particular placement of nets in the undergrowth. Remember, a few weeks ago, we watched net hunting, right? They would run their game into a net and then they would kill the game. We saw this. All right. Now, this little chart, even though it's, let me try to reverse this page. Boom. All right. We kind of, just to give y'all some insight. You see what I'm saying? I'm gonna work with you. I'm gonna make sure you got the right stuff. But here go the names of the groups. Here go the countries in the center. The other names that they were known as. Remember, every time we said a name, we also said what they were known as. You have the population, size, and environment. All right here. Remember, we said there were people in the savannah, there were people in the rainforest, there were people in the mountains. All right. And then you have the references. So you have the people that was involved in the research for the groups of people. Okay. Now, if you're watching this and you're watching it to learn and you want to know more about what's going on and you want to be specific in your research, this is where you would screenshot the video. So I'm going to pause to allow one to screenshot this. This is a significant piece of information. All right. Now, back to the subject. All right. And here is the methods, the tools that was used to hunt. Now, we just talked about all of these, and we even talked about the specifics. Hopefully, yeah, I think that you could see that they might have been too big. Oh, let me go back. All right, I'm gonna leave it like this for a second so that you really can see. I want to fill up the whole screen. Yes, Zane, it will still result in a generalized conclusion. So here are some of the tools that these 5 groups, or a lot of these groups, used to hunt game. You see the different styles of bow and arrows, spear types, group hunting with the dog, net hunting, collective net hunting, right? We saw a great example of that in our last video that we watched, right? And then, you know, collective net hunting is still a thing. So we saw all of these different methods in a sense. Now, the pygmy groups also enjoy remarkably flexibility in what they hunt and how to use different combinations of techniques and weapons according to the game. The dukers, the most commonly hunted animal, are pursued in collective hunts. Arboreal animals such as monkeys and large birds are shot with bow and arrows and crossbows. Various types of crossbows have been recorded among the groups in Western Congo Basin, and extensive variation in bows are seen in other populations. Now on to spears, right? Affixed with large blades are used in collective hunts to bring down, remember, the elephants. They talked about that in the previous. Antelopes, apes, and wild hogs. Various individual techniques often involving dogs are also utilized for trapping and catching porcupines or giant rats in their nest. This is how they got down. You know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. It's how they rock. Now, considering that all Congo Basin forest population food supplies actively depend to one degree or another on hunting, it is difficult to determine any characteristics that are specifically specifically pygmy, right? If some pygmy specificity should be drawn, however, it may be identified in the two aspects. Look what the two aspects are. The relatively greater amount of time pygmies devote to pursuing game and their destinations by other groups as specialists in elephant hunts. Y'all see that? Okay. Now, none of the types were unique to any one particular group of pygmies, and all in some way were similar to the ones that was used by farmers. So the history of hunting technology in the region involves populations in the Congo Basin. Hence, it is also a testimony of historical depth of contact between groups. For instance, bow and arrow hunting, which once appeared in the unique FA pygmies of the interior, is now known to be a technique shared by the Sudanic language-speaking populations in the region of including the FA. These are containers also. Look at the container ship. Now, we also saw this in the video. This is what makes this so unique, is everything that is written in this text, right? And remember, the video that we watched last time was recent. It was 2022, March. This book is older than that. And yet and still, you know, there's about 30, 40, hold up. This book in the 70s, I think. 80s, somewhere around there. Either way it goes, about 40 years, right, has gone by, and the technology is still the same among these people, right? We saw them make these baskets for one, to put their honey in and lower it down from the trees, or to, after they hunted their game and they were successful with hunting their game, they would put the game in there and strap it up like a backpack and carry it like that as well. But this is also showing you, what is this? Honey containers, like I said. All right. Now, let's move on a little bit. Read that out loud. What? You want me to read out loud? I did. What you want me to read out loud, Zane? You want me to go back? All right, so none of the type of weapons are unique to any one particular pygmy group, and all are in some way similar to the ones used by farmers. Thus, the history of hunting technology in the region appears to be long and involves all the populations of the Congo Basin. Hence, it is also a testimony to the historical depth of contact between groups. For instance, bow and arrow hunting, which once appeared unique in the Baaka Pygmies of the Ituru, is also known to be a technique shared by all the Sudanic language speaking populations in the region, including the Efe. Well, I just read it again, so I think it probably caught up as far as the aspects. Right? We good? Okay, the two aspects again are the relatively greater amount of time pygmies devoted to pursuing game, and the second is the destination by other groups as populations. These are the two aspects. How they use time to pursue game and the destination, especially when hunting elephants. Now, common to all pygmy groups is the practice of gathering yams, nuts, mushrooms, leaves, and insects such as termites and caterpillars. In addition, there's perhaps nothing in the forest more sought after than what? Honey. And pygmies are universally considered by their neighbors to be experts in its collection. Remember, they go to the tallest of trees just to extract honey. Very few details are available with concern to the technique, but the process frequently involves climbing what are often extremely tall trees to access the hive's position in the canopy. Remarkably, several groups use very similar tools: a singular axe with an elbow-shaped handle, a temporary collection basket made on the spot of the leaves and vines, which is discarded after collections in bark container for transporting the honey back to camp. We've seen these three tools in use by these groups. We've seen the tools used, so I ain't got to elaborate. So here's a little bit more about the wooden tools that's used for like digging for yams and so on and so forth. Now, we didn't see them dig for yams. That's one thing that we didn't see. Didn't see the yam digging. But these are the tools that look basically pretty much is made out of wood. It look like real old brooms, but spiked up to pretty much draw it up out of the ground. Hold on. All right, let's put my charge in. Okay. Now, for the task of procuring wild yam tubers, pygmies typically use various forms of digging sticks. However, a peculiar drill with a cone at the end of a very long handle has been discovered among the Baaka of the CA of Cameroon. Is used specifically for uprooting the Discoria semperflorens. To my knowledge, this tool has not been observed in any other population, either pygmy or fawn. Now, we didn't really see, we did see them fish a little bit, but we'll get to it. So, though fishing is not a prime importance to the majority of the groups of the Botswana, provided an exception, living in the swamps surrounded by Lake Tumba in the central Congo, they derive a substantial percentage of the diet from the water, together with the Kondo and the Ntumba farmers. And in other regions, fishing is practiced seasonally and is valuable complement to more prevalent modes of substance. Many methods have been developed. The Baaka, for example, released I can't even say that word, diotoxic plant poison into small rivers. During the dry season, the Baaka women employ the dam and bell method. The dam and bell method. We saw them in the video. We saw them building dams so that they could fish and trap the fish pretty easily. Remember, we saw that. And see, as the paragraph continues, it says in which they trap and caught fish by damming a portion of the river and bailing water from upstream over the barrier. These are the things that we saw already. All right. So culturally speaking, some of the things that are written in this particular book were brought out in the documentary. So this is why I said I wasn't going to read a whole lot of it, because I just wanted to try to draw some things. We all know the habitat. We know what area that they live in, how they shape their huts, beehive in a beehive type shape, because it's what they saw in nature. They built what they saw according to nature, right? Now, music, they sing like no other. We all know they sing like no other. We heard it. In everything they do, song was involved. So I'm not really going to go there. Now, they do have some different type of bow and arrows, as you can see here, double string musical instrument. Well, some of these things that look like bow and arrows, they actually use as music instruments. We all know that they use like the top of the lids to beat on the top of the lids that they use to gather water. They use those as pretty much as a drumming technique as well. That is what we do know. So more of a SARS field, linguistic diversity among the Pygmies. So the linguistic situation among the Pygmy populations is definitely diverse, showing strong heterogeneity. Unfortunately, linguistic studies on Pygmy languages are much less than anthropological ones. The majority of the languages are not documented or described, the exceptions being the Efe, the Gele, and the Baaka, right? But other than that, we're very short on linguistic understanding. So some of these people could be actually speaking in their languages, and these people don't have a general idea of who the hell such and such is. By the way, make sure that y'all, I think Panther go upload it to the Mossy. But make sure y'all check out the Hawkman from DC Comics Ancient Egyptian Origin, which is something he mentioned in his last video, which should be uploaded probably after this video. I think he just didn't do it because he didn't want to interrupt nothing, because he hadn't done it yet. So you make sure that y'all check that out. All right, so let's continue. So all Pygmy tongues are clearly related to other African languages belonging to the two phyla of the Central African, Niger Kordofanian, or the Niger-Congo stock Bantu and Adamawa Urbangian families, or the Nilo-Saharan Central Sudanic stock. There is no unique Pygmy linguistic family. I repeat, there is no unique linguistic family. All right. Okay. Now, such as one composed of the click languages. Uh-oh. All right. There you go. The relative indistinct nature of the Pygmy languages shows clearly that the history of all Pygmy groups is very strong linked to that of the farmers, the non-Pygmy population. Indeed, it is notable that the socioeconomic, in many ways, the phenotypic distinctions between Pygmies and their neighbors are not paralleled by linguistic divergence. And then you see this here. So let me continue. Nevertheless, these languages are related in various ways to farmer languages, bearing in mind the differences between dialect. Dialects are forms of speech that are mutually intelligible. Languages are not. In an absence of learning, we find two categories. Groups that speak a tongue similar to some farmers, the majority of these groups whose tongues are different from farmers. And those are, in the first category, are the Bakolo, the Babongo, the Batwa, the Baimbuti, the Basua, are from the Bantu family. The Bedzan speak a dialect of the Takar, a Bantoid language. The Efe speak a tongue, it appears a dialect very close to the Lesse farmers, which is Sudanic. The second category consists of three groups that speak languages and related but mutually unintelligible with farmer languages. These include representatives of different language families. The Baaka speak a distinct Urbanian language, the Baaka distinct Bantu language, and the Asua a distinct Central Sudanic language. Here we must insist upon obvious the languages are related to each other, share a common language ancestor. In other words, the ancestors of present-day Pygmies acquired their language while living with ancestors of present-day farmers whose language is in the same family. Therefore, they have a long common history. With this confirmation, as the question is raised on how Pygmy communities acquire their language. Herein lies the Pygmy paradox, right? Everywhere Pygmy populations went through a language shift in such a way it is possible to find any surviving Pygmy language. Hold on 1 second. All right, so from a linguistic point of view, Pygmies merged. All right, let me slow this down so y'all can see the language stuff. All right. And let me kind of go slow. So this way you could pause the video or capture what you need to capture. Now, the languages of African languages, in contrast, their ways of life, habits, technologies, and cultures have usually remained remarkably distinct. For the Pygmies in Central Africa, language shift was not linked to a cultural shift. Now, we're not going to talk about the relationship of farmers today, but what we're going to get into is a little mythology, and then I got, like I said, another video that would be unique. So perceptions of Pygmies are somewhat mixed and ambiguous nature. They are both despised and admired, or even feared at times simultaneously. Their significant presence in the mythology of farmer people throughout the region and amply demonstrated. Several documents attest to the symbolic importance of the Pygmies in some farming societies, and the oral traditions of many societies in Central Africa grant them a quasi-supernatural symbolic stature of the border of human world. Certain oral traditions tell encounters with Pygmies during their initial migration. There were guides and initiated farmers into the wild forest, teaching them rites and specific techniques, including some not considered to be typical of hunter-gatherers, such as the forging of iron. In the groups whose social political system is monarchy, such as the Tikar, Cameroon, or the Congo, the Pygmies are considered to be in the same revered category as sacred king. They are the only persons allowed to touch him during his birth, enthronement, and the period of mourning following his death. We're not getting into economy. We're going to move forward to our video here, because that's just the conclusion, and I ain't getting into all of that.
In a world they say is shrinking fast, the space. At the dawn of time, beneath the clouds of Africa's mysterious mountains of the moon, thousands of years before recorded history, an ancient race of pygmy hunters lived in the misty twilight of a great rainforest. Perhaps more than any other known people, the pygmies blended naturally with their environment, the humid rainforest of tropical Africa, judged hostile by modern men, yet considered by some to have been the birthplace of mankind itself. What if today, deep in the forest, we were to find a surviving group of living fossils, pygmies completely untouched by the outside world? To anyone searching the vastness of the Ituri forest for a hunting band of Mbuti pygmies such as this, it is not enough to spend days walking the forest, exposed to all the elements that even African natives do not willingly endure. The pygmies themselves must want to be found. If they don't, no human being except another pygmy could ever find them. That's how they've survived, their ancient lifestyle unchanged for unknown centuries. If such a pygmy were to be transported back in time to his world, say 6,000 years ago, he would not be aware of any difference around him. He would eat the same food, have his hut built of the same materials, hunt with the same weapons, dance to the forest with the same dances. Hunting animals and gathering wild foods, the nomadic Mbuti wander through the forest at will, building a new camp every 5 or 6 weeks when food becomes scarce around an old camp. In their humid equatorial home, they wear only a wisp of cloth made from tree bark, sometimes painted with interesting designs to please the eye. They can see no good reason for leaving the forest that so adequately provides all the food and shelter they need, a place where politics, crime, and war are unknown. An Mbuti pygmy prepares for the hunt. His weapon, the bow and arrow. His target, the monkey. Considered small game, the monkey is not usually hunted with bone or metal-tipped arrows. Instead, simple wooden arrows are treated with a deadly poison made from certain insects and plants, enough to kill a monkey within minutes. Although a regular part of the pygmy diet, the colobus monkey is in no danger of extinction. The Mbuti don't own a single gun between them. Killing only for food, their hunting methods have remained unchanged for centuries. Hunting with nets is a technique used by the Mbuti pygmies in Central Africa. Using only materials of the forest, each family makes and maintains a net. From time to time, all the nets in the community are tied end to end and strung out through the forest in a maximum effort to catch game. While the men tend the nets, the women beat the forest, driving the animals ahead of them into the net. The animals they hope to catch are the forest antelopes, hiding somewhere among the trees. Extremely shy and acutely sensitive to danger, all nearby animals are immediately aware of the pygmy's presence. They listen, trying to locate the exact place the danger is coming from. But the danger is constantly moving as the beaters begin to close in, trapping the animals between them and the net. The animals that panic run blindly into the net and die, the meat they provide to be shared by all. Death comes quickly for those animals unlucky enough to be trapped. The hunt.
All right, so I wanna kind of make it clear. I'm not gonna get into the whole video, but this is examples of what we just basically talked about as far as how they hunt. You saw the dog there, you know what I'm saying? You saw the net, you saw them group hunting. This is an older video. You already seen a more recent video to show you how some things have not really evolved in among the Congo Basin hunter-gatherers, right? They still using the same old tactics to be able to hone in on their hunting measures for food.
Continues with the steady approach of the beaters.
You see the baskets, right? The baskets are used for hunting. But more importantly, if it's game involved, they're gonna have some game in there. If it's yams, it's gonna have some yams in there.
Sometimes, not too often, when there's a surplus of meat, a tiny Imboloco antelope will be captured and kept as a pet. But its future is as uncertain as the next hunt. The gathering, bartering, and preparing of food occupies much time in the life of a pygmy woman. It's only when the chores are done that she takes the time to do things just for herself. Mother's milk is often used in preparing the cosmetic that all pygmy women apply to each other's faces. The milk is mixed with a wild forest fruit, the juice of which turns black on contact with the milk. Water would affect the same chemical reaction, but even in the Ituri forest, water is not always immediately available. The juice, now turned black with the action of the milk, is strained off into an earthen pot, and since mirrors are unknown in the forest, a friend applies the makeup. Trained since childhood, each pygmy woman deftly draws lines with the sure precision of an artist. Every woman has her own idea of what looks best, and no two designs are alike. But there are few complaints, for having no mirrors, nobody really knows just how they look. While the men may be expert hunters and providers of meat, the women are skilled at an endless variety of jobs about the camp. Making a sleeping mat out of mongongo leaves is done with such effortless skill that it almost appears easy. But a lifetime of practice lies behind such casual endeavors. Such sleeping mats are waterproof against the perpetually damp floor of the forest. When one wears out, a new one is made. Everybody has slept on such a mat all their lives and will probably die on one. Many children are born on mongongo leaves. In pygmy society, grown-ups frequently play together with children. It's one way of passing along customs and knowledge from one generation to the next. In the hoop dance, mothers teach their daughters gestures and body movements, symbolizing events and occurrences in adult life. And besides, it's a pleasant way of passing the hours when the day's work is done. Some of the body movements might be frowned upon in another society, but the dance that the young girls perform reflects a complete innocence of mind in doing what comes naturally. For a pygmy mother to openly search a daughter's head for lice is as natural as any other sign of affection. Rather, it would be considered unnatural not to remove the lice if they are there. From about the age of 2 years, little boys are already learning the most important activity in a pygmy community, hunting. Butterflies are not exactly a dangerous animal, but one must start somewhere. Hunting frogs is not much more ambitious, but it all leads to the day when, as young men, the accuracy of their arrows will mean food or hunger for the camp. There are no chiefs among the pygmies. The most respected men are the best hunters. Extreme humidity allows frogs to live permanently out of water and lay their eggs on land. Some frogs never make it. The most poisonous snake in the Ituri forest, the horned viper. Its slow mode of traveling on its ribs relies on terrifying speed and deadliness, for there is no snake that strikes faster or kills quicker than the horned viper. From frogs to snakes is a natural step in the training of a young pygmy hunter, and besides, the snake makes better eating. Cut off its poisonous head, and the meat is almost considered a delicacy. But first, the snake must be killed before it can be eaten. Among pygmy hunters, there is none more renowned for skill and bravery than the one they call Sangu. Living deep in the forest with his wife and young son, his only weapon a spear, Sangu is known for the number of elephants he has killed single-handedly. Many pygmies are in turn killed by the larger animals, and they say that an elephant will one day get Sangu. But hunting is his job, a job he takes great pride in doing well. The daily rainstorm is due to strike any minute now. Time to take shelter in the fragile huts that seem light enough to blow away. To experience a tropical storm, sheltered only by a few leaves and sticks, is to know a feeling of total insecurity, unless one is born a pygmy. Yet the temporary hut of the nomadic Mbuti is entirely functional. With a fire burning inside, it can be as snug and warm as a hut built of brick and mortar. Meat is stored in baskets hanging from the wall, and the beast can be cooked any time on the fire, which is always burning. Because of their great hunting skill, pygmies enjoy more protein in their diet than most people in Africa. In the Ituri forest, family togetherness is not just an empty phrase, at least among the Mbuti. Children are not isolated in separate rooms, and nobody can ever be truly lonely. Smoldering fires, collective body heat, and warm, humid nights make bedclothes unnecessary and unknown in the Ituri. Just a sleeping mat of green mungongo leaves to cover the damp earth. Total saturation. Frequent rains and tropical heat combine to produce a humidity of up to 100%. Trees continue to drip water long after the rain has stopped. Organized devastation. A forest that took millions of years to evolve, chopped down in days to make way for the villagers' gardens and more houses made of mud and sticks. For generations, the pygmies have come to the Negro villages for metal tips for their arrows, iron knives, and spear blades. The secrets of metalworking with bellows and forge are jealously guarded and never shared by the village blacksmith. On their part, the expert pygmy hunters offer meat from the forest, something the villagers value highly. And so the tools, or weapons, are offered in exchange for a share of the hunter's kill. Ultimately, the villagers may have the final advantage. For most of all, the pygmy desires the bananas and other cultivated foods that only the villagers can provide. And somewhere along the way, the gentle little hunters seem to have accepted the villagers as their overlords and owners. On special occasions, many pygmies will come out of the forest to gather at the village of their owners. News of an impending elephant hunt will bring the biggest crowd of all. And when pygmies get together, one thing is almost certain to happen. When the villagers want to kill an elephant, they hand out spears to the pygmies and tell them, "Go, kill an elephant." This not only increases the chances of a successful hunt, but it's considered much safer, at least for the villagers. The valuable instructions from the villagers to the pygmies could be reduced to just a few simple words. Here are the spears. Now go and kill an elephant, a big elephant. And don't forget, the tusks are for the chief, so they must be big too. The villagers are not especially tall people, yet they tower over the pygmies like giants. But the pygmies are not unduly impressed. They'll kill an elephant all right, but only when they're ready. For a few days after visiting the villages, the pygmy diet is often supplemented with such cultivated delicacies as the banana, which they carry back into the forest with them. In its various forms, they will roast, boil, and take raw this favorite fruit, eating it as many as 3 times a day when available. The pygmies like to eat such things, but never grow them in the forest. That would mean settling permanently in the same place, cutting down trees, making plantations, a complete change in lifestyle for the nomadic pygmies who love their shady home as it is. Tradition holds that the pygmies originated in the primeval forest, but they always lived there. Certainly, their lives are so interwoven with the ecosystem of their beautiful home that they are as much a part of it as the antelope, the insects, or the fish in the stream. Unmapped streams of the purest water flow gently among the trees towards the nearest river. Streams that only the Mbuti have seen and named. Their forest sanctuary is not taken for granted by the pygmies. They praise and thank it for what it provides. They light fires in its honor, sing in its praise, and think of it in almost deified terms. Until now, inhabited only by scattered groups of the little people, the Ituri is one of the unpolluted natural wonders still left on Earth. The making of cloth from tree bark is a satisfying, creative task for a pygmy. Using only the inner layer of bark from a certain tree, the piece is separated and the rougher outer bark discarded. About an hour's work is necessary with a traditional elephant tusk hammer to pound the bark into a soft cloth, a process that greatly increases the original size of the piece. The creative satisfaction comes in the final painting of the bark cloth with vegetable dyes, usually in geometric designs. Every Mbuti is his or her own person, and as with face painting, each design is different and must not conform to a tribal pattern. Human pressures and emotional stress are not excessive in the rainforest. An artist's materials cost precisely nothing, and time in the Ituri is not measured in dollars. The hunter Sangu is one of the group given spears by the villagers. But something of a loner, Sangu doesn't like to hunt in a group, especially when after the dangerous elephant. He'll go along with his friends until the serious hunting begins, and leave the group to hunt alone. Preparation for the hunt includes the blacking of faces. The Mbuti say that when the elephant sees them among the shadows, it will think that they are chimpanzees, and so ignore them. Of all the preparations to kill an elephant, none is more enjoyed by the hunters than the making and drinking of a ceremonial drink called ligo. It's made from the kola nut, with an added stimulant in the form of certain green berries from the forest. All the hunters given spears by the villagers have collected at a single camp in the forest, including the inscrutable Sango. The kola nut contains caffeine, and once provided the stimulant used in modern soft drinks. Mixed with the green berries, the effect on Sango and his friends will be much the same as exceedingly strong coffee. But unlike nervous coffee addicts elsewhere, the pygmies wait patiently for their brew, knowing it will come only when it's ready. Cups are unknown in a nomadic Mbuti camp. Instead, leaves are passed around to be used for drinking the kola concoction. And so a bond of friendship is strengthened between a group of hunters, just as it might have been thousands of years ago in the same primeval forest. There will be a personal triumph or tragedy for the man who thrusts the first spear into the elephant. But everyone knows that if the hunt goes well, the meat will be shared by all. The hunters leave camp without farewells or fanfare. In his adult life, each man has been on more hunts than he can remember. Some have killed the fierce forest buffalo. Others have accounted for the okapi and bongo. Only 2 of them have previously killed an elephant. One of them, Sangu, the quiet one. It has been 3 years since anyone in their part of the forest has killed one of these giants. And then the hunter himself was killed horribly by the wounded beast before it ran off to die from its spear wound. always happiest to be moving through their beloved forest, the hunters break into a steady run that will take them faster towards the elephant. They carry smoldering logs of wood so that they'll have fire wherever they stop for the night, about 50 kilometers deeper into the forest. One of the more persistent dangers of the forest, the ferocious army ants. On the march day and night, they swarm over every living thing in their path, attacking a man as quickly as they would another insect. A particularly juicy meal is traveling nearby, blind and unaware of danger. A worm, longer than some species of snakes, long enough to be a swallowing problem for the average worm-eating bird. While the hunters jog after the elephants, their wives and children follow in their tracks, carrying with them everything they own. The huts they left behind, they have abandoned forever, to be reclaimed by the forest. Somewhere ahead, before nightfall, they'll stop and build an entirely new camp out of the virgin forest. They don't expect to see their men until the next day, for they know the elephants are deep in the forest. As always, the women carry burning logs with them to the new camp, apparently unable or unwilling to make fire without them. In a world they say is shrinking fast, the space age, a group of nomadic pygmy women are making a camp exactly as they did thousands of years ago. The very first pole of a new hut, a family home, to be built in a couple of hours. Total cost? Absolutely nothing. Building permit? It hasn't been invented yet. Purchase of land? Walk in any direction for a day and take your pick. A private stream, a riverbank, a hilltop. It's all free for the taking so far, until time and the outside world catch up with the Mbuti pygmies. No one knows how long the Mbuti will ignore a government order to abandon their nomadic life of freedom and settle permanently near the road. It is perhaps unfortunate that nobody has thought to ask the pygmies what they want to do.
All right, so let me stop right there. Are y'all not paying attention to the harmony that's being used in the background of this video? Anyone not paying attention to it? Sound very similar to the same song that is sung today in 2022, and this video is old. They're still building huts the same way. They're still hunting and gathering the same way. They have not advanced their technology at all. But many of the people from the forest have ventured out into the farming networks of the social political world outside of the forest and have lost lost fragments of their identity as the hunter-gatherers of the rainforest. So why the heck am I even talking about these people, bringing these people to you, re-examining this information, making sure that we're not missing details of everything that we got going on? It all has to deal with the evolving narrative of mankind. Where did the earliest Homo sapiens live that we know of? Where did they come out of? Where did they hide? When we start moving around and doing the things we're doing and beginning to evolve the way that we wanted to evolve, where the hell were we at? That's all of that is important in anthropology, which is a fascinating field of interest for me and many others, because that's why I love to dive into this work, is in the field of anthropology and how anthropologists think. And yeah, we get negative connotations in regard to some of these people, absolutely. But it is what it is. So you know, I don't want to kind of drag this out. We're going to see the same things over and over that we discussed, how they hunt the elephant, yada, 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 the rhino, all kind of stuff. As you can see here, they take down the elephant. It's a really big deal. He said, how the one dude got a fade. Yeah, man, they were cutting their hair back then. Not necessarily caves. You had to come out of the trees before you could go into the caves, my boy. I'm gonna say that again. You had to come out of the trees in order to go into the caves. Those things are significant. These fools really think they Jews. My cousin them, they crazy, bro. I can't deal with it no more. Hold on 1 second. So that's where we are with this, man. So hopefully I provided you with some type of substance to help you be able to understand the importance of studying the hunter-gatherers of the Congo Basin and why we shouldn't be using the term pygmies or referring to these people as such. You know, even though they're continuing to argue that the people have not came up for a name for themselves, why would they come up for a name for themselves when people have already stigmatized the name on the people and got other people calling these people, created a whole field around uh, a field of study around trying to track and trace these people. Craziness, but it is what it is at this point in time. It is what it is, and there's nothing that we actually can make of it. You know what I mean? So. I appreciate everybody tapping in, man. I'm not gonna hold up y'all day. You know, look for the upload from Black Panther, as it is important to you know, dropping some jewels, especially with what's going on in the world. I don't see nobody else saying that in the chat, honestly. Everyone else got buckshot cannon. When a dude had a booster fade. Well, y'all retarded. But yeah, man, appreciate y'all tapping in again. Like the show, share the show, tell a friend, tell a friend. We out.